Well, I guess in one respect, if you pick up the theme that we've been discussing in the last few weeks, and as you can imagine, I haven't spent a whole lot of, or really much time at all, really, in the last week because of those other circumstances. But if you pick up the theme of where we left off, like last week, in terms of how these issues are really important within the context of like developing a business plan, for example, for an enterprise, then these questions all of a sudden come to the fore, don't they? Because the more you, in my mind anyway, the more you examine this issue about answering or having a deep inquiry around the what, what is it that I'm going to do, and I love the language you use about, the attitude you come to the issue with. That's going to be one of the fundamental issues, isn't it, in terms of how this planning process will unfold for individuals, because it really is how are you showing up, to enter into this process, and if you're showing up with an attitude of well, if you use our key principles as a guiding light sort of thing, about enoughness and sufficiency and shared prosperity and those sorts of elements, then they are going to be the indicators of your attitude when you show up to answer those questions, that fundamental question about the what, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
And I guess for me,
yeah,
and the discussion around things like soul, for me anyway, and maybe I'm the crazy one, but for me, it just adds a lot more texture around and atmosphere around, about how do you show up when you want to enter into this process. Because I guess that's one of the issues that I've said it to you 1,000 times, I'm sure, that I've struggled with the traditional business planning process. It seems clinical, it seems warfare oriented, it seems disconnected from humanity in many respects, it's just.
But the reason, Don, that it is disconnected, I don't think the actual planning is disconnected. It's that nobody asks the questions around the planning, okay? The why, and you see I think that's the only thing we bring into the party here, is you take a conventional business plan, and once you start asking the why question, the business plan will change, and it might not even develop, okay? And only a person who has not thought through, but if we go back to the soul at the beginning of this conversation, has sort of, the soul has influenced that person and that person's thinking and thoughts for the betterment of mankind and humanity, and has got an idea of why you're here, okay, and what the purpose is. Now that person is now ready to answer for himself the why, okay. But people who are not, then we've said this, okay. I don't believe our business plan is going to look any different to any other business plan, okay. Because you've got to plan. If you're going to open a restaurant, you've got to plan where you're going to open that restaurant. You've got to plan what food you're going to serve. You're going to plan how you're going to market. And so those things, the business plan doesn't change. The only aspect is the why, okay? The why, okay? And so, and then once they know and they're happy with the why, even if you and I aren't happy with it, we wish them well, okay, and let them go their route. So ours is not to develop some new sort of business plan, okay. Ours is right. Okay, let's just take a conventional business plan and let's just put in a whole lot of whys after everything as a starting point, okay. why do you start in this business? Okay. Okay. Why do you want it placed over there? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Why do you want to serve that sort of food? Okay. And so on. And I think we need to get that started, get that going, and let's do an absolutely business plan that you've done for years, okay? And you've done it for clients and things like that. And I think that you mustn't change that, okay? It's just your attitude towards that business plan. You're going to bring a whole new single element. Why? Okay. Why? Okay. Have you thought of this? Possibly. Okay. You don't want to persuade them, or but you can see that they're moving in a certain direction, or they clearly come in at you in a certain direction, which is very, let's call it holistic, soul-orientated, digital distributive direction. You sense that, and so you don't instruct them. You just lead them through the why question. Okay, and so I think that we can get going. I think we can start. If you agree with me, of course. I haven't asked you if you agree. Do you agree?
I do agree, and I think the way I would sort of characterize it in my own mind is that, yes, a lot of those fundamental questions are there in the business plan, but perhaps some of those questions, when you put the why either in front of it or hard on the heels after it, it maybe elevates, or it reprioritizes the importance of the answers associated with those questions.
Right.
Yes, finances are going to be important because obviously, it's the currency that, which is like the blood of the business. It's what circulates. But a lot of in my experience, a lot of the traditional business plans, it's all about the money. Show me the money. Show me the money.
But that comes up in the why, you see.
It does come up in the why, and that's the thing. And it's not that the question goes away. It's just there are some more fundamental questions that need to be answered before you get to that question.
And we've got to be careful that we don't fall in the trap of trying to convert them from they are not. Okay. So get finances. I want to make money. Okay, that's why I'm going into business. Well, I want to make money. Okay, and I want it. Then that's fine. Okay, off you go. Okay, there's nothing more I can do for you. You're all right. Okay, you go and do that. Don't try and talk them out of it.
No, not at all. Okay. No, we're not evangelists. No, not at all.
Yeah, absolutely. But also, we don't want to, as we mentioned this last week, we don't want to have a two-sided businessman. Okay, a two-faced businessman, where tells the world I'm going to do this for humanity, but on this side, he's just greedy. Okay, he's just ego, and he just wants people to know how great he is, and how rich he is, and so and I think it's an issue that our questioning will probably bring out. Okay, but they still need a business plan.
Oh, for sure. No doubt whatsoever. No doubt whatsoever.
Yeah.
And no, that's exactly right. It's exactly right. And it's an exciting time, even though notwithstanding all the challenges, but it's an exciting time when you think about it within the context of the possibilities that flow out of answering the why question. In my mind, it's something which is energy giving rather than, oh, this is also hard.
Yeah.
The more that you ponder those questions and seek to answer them authentically, it energizes you, in my view.
Yeah, no, it absolutely does. Absolutely does. And as we said before, we imply things that perhaps mean soul, okay, and the qualities that go with it, and the benefits. You see, to me, the whole soul approach, or the whole heavenly approach, and the selflessness approach, and the kindness approach, and the sharing approach, these things lead to business sustainability, okay, and not to the soul, or not to God, or anything like that. It leads to a holistic sustainability where everybody benefits, okay. And when everybody benefits, then there's a family, there's a support, and the business grows and it moves. Whereas if you using the ego side, you are extracting from the business. You're extracting the money out of the business and putting it into shares or into a vault or somewhere, and nobody becomes a family. Nobody shares in that money. That money doesn't flow. Okay, so one doesn't have to use. You and I are prone to it. Use spiritual terms, because none of the things I mentioned are spiritual terms. They're about how you're going to enjoy your business and everybody around you, and how it's going to be sustainable, and how it's going to grow to a point where you have enough, okay, and you want to give it to somebody else and share.
And I think the important part of what you've just said too is there's also going to be a need for a bit of precision in that too, because it's interesting, because I watched a documentary there. I might have mentioned to you, a couple of weeks ago about Facebook and the algorithms that have been developed,
Yes, you did.
around it. And the original developers didn't have any sort of, well, not overtly anyway, from the ones that were interviewed, there was no motivation around, let's create something here which is going to, make us rich beyond our dreams, because ironically, all of these developers subsequently left the organization. But they were motivated by what a wonderful opportunity the technology can provide is to connect people, and connecting and presumably stimulating conversations and all of those sorts of positive human attributes about being in touch with others and hearing other stories and those sorts of things. The ironic thing about it is that how the technology developed, it did exactly what you just described there in terms of feeding the ego, because the more the artificial intelligence was programmed, it was all about how do you get more likes? How do you feed the ego rather than how do I become better connected to people?
Absolutely. And that's where it absolutely is now. And like even last week, where they're now getting so anti people's opinions that they're just cutting them off. They cut off 200,000 Facebook pages last week. It's like ridiculous. Google's doing the same. They're stopping searches. They're manipulating searches. Now, that is the ego. That is the animalistic side. Okay, and that's why our questioning will become so important. Okay, is just what's the starting point? Okay. Of that, like the starting point of the original Facebook people. You've said, I haven't read that, but you've told me before, and it's really interesting. I'd like to know where those people are now, okay, and what they're doing, because they're all.
Well, ironically, most of them are still doing the technology thing, but they're doing it either in their own businesses or in collectives amongst them, trying to get the train back on the tracks about and there's a lot of the sort of fundamental principles around, digital distribution is about connecting people, the digital communities, and the values on how those digital communities operate, as a learning experience from the physical communities as to now we can connect to basically anyone on the planet and develop a positive, human relationship with them. But ironically, though, their concerns were that the artificial intelligence that was developed around these algorithms, is their view is that even if we want to, we can't turn it off now, because it's the self-learning that's gone on within that technology is something that they just can't turn off now.
I understand that. Yeah. I
So,
understand that. Yeah.
so it's an interesting front that has opened up. It's almost like this, and it's all, like the traditional spiritual stories. It's this dynamic that's happening within consciousness itself, rather than between you white man over there and me brown skinned man over here, or whatever the discriminating factor is going to be, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it takes us right back into the spiritual realm in my respects, about the angels and the fallen and all of those sorts of concepts which came up through those stories. So
Right. Okay.
So there's nothing new under the sun. So it's important, I think, as we continue this inquiry and develop these questions, that we ground them in some of these, traditional wisdom as well, I think, so.
Yeah, but I think that will come automatically because, of who you are. That will be there. I think that, like, we really have got to now, you go look back on your records in your computer, and I'll do the same, and we'll find business plans that we've used in the last decade or somewhere. And we'll Google to see if there's anything more that come up. And we don't reinvent the wheel. We create a conventional business plan, okay, or the framework for a conventional business plan, okay, and then we allow people, do service to them for free. Okay, and we make it clear that we're still evolving, developing. We're going to charge in the future, okay, but we want to get our foot into that next realm of action, okay, and I think that's what we should do right now is do that, and maybe you and I will interview each other and say, right, we've got a business plan. You make up a plan that you want to do, and I'll make up an idea that I want to do, and we question each other, and we, in our Wednesday issues or on a Sunday or whenever, we go through that process.
Okay. I think that latter part is really important, because that's one of the things I've sort of been exercising in my mind as well, is that the conversations are great, but we also need to go and put into action what we're talking about. And if that means you and I developing not only the Phoenix Rising business further, or even other business ideas that might be sitting in the back of our minds, like toys or whatever, then now's the time to do it.
Yeah, and I think we must make a lot of effort now in thinking about not only thinking, but doing.
Putting it into practice.
And put into practice.
There always comes a point, like if we were designing a nuclear submarine or a fighter jet, a brand new fighter jet. At some point, you've got to build it and put it out there on the runway, or put it in the ocean and say, oh, well, let's see if this puppy flies, or this one, if this one sinks.